are memories that never leave you, no matter how many years pass. They come back in the middle of the night, when the house is silent and the world seems to hold its breath. I didn't know who he was. For almost 2 years, to me, he was just the neighbor in apartment 3B. He lived across the hallway in an old building, the kind that groans when the wind presses against the windows. The walls were thin, stained by years of dampness, and the air always carried the sour smell of old paint and something else I could never quite place. At night, the hallway lights flickered, buzzing softly, turning the corridor into a narrow tunnel of yellow shadows. Every sound felt closer than it should have been. Every footstep echoed longer than it should have. I moved there looking for something cheap, temporary. I told myself I wouldn't stay long. The first night, I heard strange noises. Not screams, not arguments, just footsteps. Slow, moving back and forth outside my door. I lay still, counting them without realizing I was doing it. One step, then another. Then a pause. The floorboards creaked like they were tired of carrying secrets. I waited for the steps to fade away. They did. Eventually, I told myself it was nothing. Old building, thin walls, my imagination filling in the gaps. At night, the building had a different pulse, slower, heavier. Sometimes I woke up feeling like the air in my room was thicker, harder to breathe. The silence pressed against my ears until even the smallest noise felt too loud. Pipes rattled in the walls. Somewhere far away, a door would close. The elevator groaned as if it were alive, dragging itself between floors. The building felt less like a place people lived, and more like something that simply contained them. I saw him for the first time one morning when I was running late for work. He was standing in front of his door, struggling with his keys. His movements were slow, careful, as if he didn't want to make noise. He looked up when he noticed me. His eyes were pale, almost washed out, and for a moment I had the strange sensation that he had been watching me before I saw him. "Good morning," I said, mostly to fill the silence. "Morning," he replied. His voice was calm, too calm, soft in a way that didn't quite match the cold hallway around us. After that, we passed each other from time to time. The elevator rides were the worst. The small space trapped the smell of his clothes, something clean layered over something faintly sour. He never looked directly at me in the mirror, always at the floor numbers lighting up one by one. I could hear his breathing, slow, even, like he was counting something in his head. I started to notice things. He never had visitors, no laughter behind his door, no voices that weren't his. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear his door open, then close, then open again, as if he couldn't decide whether to leave or stay. There were nights when I heard something heavy being moved across the floor of his apartment. The sound traveled through the hallway and into my chest, vibrating there long after it stopped. I would lie awake, staring into the dark, telling myself not to think about what could make a sound like that. The missing posters started appearing on the front door of the building. Faces I didn't recognize, names I didn't remember. The word "missing" printed too neatly, too cleanly, as if it were trying to be polite. The news talked about patterns, about someone moving quietly through the city. I listened while making coffee, the radio low, the steam from the mug fogging the window. I told myself this was just another story meant for other people. Fear always feels distant until it learns your address. One night, I noticed a dark stain on the floor outside his door. It looked old, set into the cracks between the tiles. I stood there longer than I should have, my key hanging uselessly in my hand. The hallway smelled faintly metallic, like rain hitting old metal. I felt dizzy, like the floor had tilted slightly beneath my feet. I went inside my apartment and locked the door. Then I checked the lock again and again. My bed was pressed against the wall we shared. At first, I thought the sounds I heard were part of the building, the usual settling, the normal groans of old pipes. But then I started hearing murmurs, not words, just the suggestion of them, a low sound that rose and fell like someone speaking in another room with the door closed. Sometimes there was a short laugh. It was quiet, almost gentle. That somehow made it worse. One night, there was a dull thump against the wall, then another. Then a sound that made my stomach tighten, something like a breath caught halfway between a sob and a whisper. I sat up in bed, my hands clenched in the sheets. I pressed my ear to the wall. The wall was cold. The sound stopped. The silence that followed felt deliberate, like someone on the other side knew I was listening. I told myself to stop, to sleep, to forget. The night the police came, the hallway filled with flashing light. Blue, red. The colors slid over the walls and into my room, painting everything in slow, unnatural waves. Voices murmured outside. The door to his apartment stood open, and the darkness inside it looked deeper than the hallway, like it went back farther than the space should allow. I watched from behind my doorframe, my heart beating so loudly I was sure someone could hear it. They carried dark bags out of the apartment. The smell in the hallway was the same one I had noticed before. Metallic, heavy. It clung to the back of my throat. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, my back against the door, trying to make myself as small and quiet as possible. After that, the apartment stayed empty. The silence felt louder than the noises ever had. The hallway seemed longer, like it stretched a little more every night. I started leaving lights on when I slept. Sometimes I thought I heard footsteps stopping outside my door, even though I knew no one lived across the hall anymore. I would hold my breath until the sound faded into nothing. I moved away not long after. New city, new walls, thicker ones, I told myself, safer ones. But some nights in the dark, I wake up with the same feeling I had back then. The sense that the air in the room has changed, that the silence is listening, that something on the other side of the wall is aware of me. There's something I never told anyone. The last night before they arrested him, I heard 3 soft knocks on the wall we shared. Slow, evenly spaced, not loud enough to be accidental, not fast enough to be impatient. 3 knocks, like a signal, like a reminder. Sometimes, when I'm half asleep and the world feels thin around the edges, I swear I can still hear them. 3 soft knocks. I used to think monsters lived far away from ordinary places, in abandoned buildings, in dark alleys, in the kind of places you never planned to visit. I was wrong. For 3 years, I lived with one. He was my cousin. We grew up together, shared meals, shared jokes, shared a small apartment when money got tight and neither of us had anywhere else to go. He was quiet, not shy, just contained. The kind of person who listened more than he spoke. The kind who smiled at the right moments, laughed at the right jokes, and somehow never stood out in a room. People trusted him because there was nothing about him that felt threatening. He blended into the background of every space he entered. At night, our apartment was always dim. The lights flickered sometimes, and the hallway outside our door smelled faintly of old carpet and dust. He worked late shifts, or at least that's what he told me. There were many nights when I went to sleep alone and woke up to hear the soft click of the lock as he came in quietly, trying not to wake me. I thought it was considerate. I started noticing small things I couldn't explain. The way he washed his hands longer than necessary. The way he kept the bathroom door locked, even when no one else was home. The way he flinched when sirens passed outside just for a second before forcing his face back into something neutral. The city had been dealing with a string of disappearances. The news called them isolated incidents, different neighborhoods, different types of people, no clear pattern. I watched the reports in the evenings while he sat across from me on the couch, scrolling on his phone, completely uninterested. Sometimes I caught him glancing at the screen when the anchor described where the last person was seen. One night, I came home earlier than usual. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. His bedroom door was closed. The light beneath it was off. I assumed he wasn't home. I dropped my bag by the door and walked toward the kitchen. That's when I heard a sound. A low, uneven noise coming from his room. Not loud. Almost careful. I don't know why I didn't knock. I don't know why I didn't call his name. I pushed the door open. The room was dark except for the glow of his laptop on the desk. The screen was filled with open windows, news articles, maps, faces, missing people, photos enlarged, annotated, circled. The walls beside the desk were covered in pieces of paper, taped carelessly, overlapping. Dates, locations, times, lines connecting one place to another, like a web. I stood there, unable to breathe, as the realization settled into my chest. Then I saw the bag on the floor. It was half open. Inside were items that didn't belong in any ordinary bedroom. Things I recognized from the news. Things that had been described, but never shown. My stomach turned cold. My ears started ringing, drowning out the soft hum of the laptop fan. Behind me, the floor creaked. I turned slowly. He was standing in the doorway, watching me. Not angry, not surprised, just tired. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched, thick and fragile, like it might shatter if either of us moved too quickly. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said quietly. My body moved before my mind caught up. I stepped back, shaking my head, whispering his name like it might remind him of who he was supposed to be. He took a step toward me, his hands open, empty, as if that made everything less dangerous. I ran. I don't remember how I got out of the apartment. I don't remember the stairs or the street or the cold air hitting my face. I only remember my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone when I finally called the police. They came quickly. Too quickly, it felt like they had already been waiting for a reason. He didn't resist when they took him away. He looked at me once, over the shoulder of an officer, and there was something in his eyes I still can't name. Not anger, not hatred, something closer to relief. I moved out that same week. New place, new locks, new walls. But sometimes when I'm alone at night, I think about how easily I believed I knew him. How many dinners we shared. How many quiet evenings passed with him sitting just a few feet away from me. And the thought that still wakes me up in the dark is this: if I hadn't come home early that night, I would still be living with him. I knew it wasn't a coincidence when he sped up the moment I did. The street was empty, still wet from earlier rain. The streetlights lit only short patches of sidewalk, leaving long stretches of darkness in between. I was tired from work, my mind anywhere but on danger. Then I felt the presence behind me, not just a sound, an intention, heavy, pressing against my back like the air itself had thickened. I walked faster, so did he. I crossed the street without looking. He crossed with me. Then I heard him say quietly, like he was testing how afraid I was, "Easy. Don't scream." My heart went wild. There was no one around. No lit windows, no passing cars. Just my footsteps, his footsteps, and a silence that felt like it didn't want witnesses. I turned down a narrower, darker side street, hoping I could lose him. It was a mistake. The sound of his steps changed. He wasn't pretending anymore. He was coming for me with purpose. I felt his hand brush my arm. It was brief, almost clumsy, but it was enough for my body to understand what my mind didn't want to accept. He shoved me against the wall, not wildly, calmly, the way someone does something they've practiced. I could smell his breath, feel his weight moving closer. He said something I won't repeat, something that made it clear he didn't plan on letting me go. I screamed. It wasn't loud. It came out broken and thin. Then, by pure luck, a door opened across the street. A light flicked on. Just a small movement, but enough. He stepped back. I took that second. I tore myself free and ran without looking back, my body shaking, not knowing where the strength came from. That night, I learned something that still follows me. Not every serial killer looks like a monster. Some of them just walk behind you, waiting for the street to be empty